What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the College Football Cut. I'm your host, Adam Mack, joined alongside my amazing co-host, Jerred. Jerred, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
It's finally we have a big week of college football we get to talk about, but
Yeah.
the Eagles are on Thursday Night Football. They're trying to ruin my mood right now, but the show must go on. Even though Philly doesn't want to do that right now.
Well, at least it's halftime. You shouldn't be too distracted.
Yeah, but it's just more so just disappointing. Like they're not even trying out there. Nick Sirianni's calling plays like a mediocre high school coach. I'm over here saying is Jim Schwartz available to take over our defense again. It's not a good scenario for the Eagles right now. But 3 top 10 picks are coming our way next April. So I think it's. That's the positive I keep reminding myself all season. Every time, we lose, it's a step closer to Derek Stingley or Kyle Hamilton. So, you win some, you lose some. So I'll keep that going for myself right now. But, man, what a week of college football last week. I was expecting a lot of fun, but I was not expecting that much fun.
Man, it was, this is kind of the week we've been waiting for. I think we were talking about it on the show last week. We were like, we just need an upset, or we need something interesting to happen. And I think we had some good stuff last week. So
I know there's 3 games that obviously stick out to me, and I think we're going to probably touch on all 3. But we'll start with my least favorite player in college football finally got benched because everyone crucified me because I said he was a bum. But Oklahoma pulled off the comeback. They upset Texas. Caleb Williams was the one who took over and won the game.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts? Is, Oklahoma back, or is Texas, did they lose that game?
Man, well, I really thought Texas had it. I remember when I texted you this weekend, I think it was when it was 28-14 and still in the first quarter. I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And, it was what the Red River Showdown's supposed to be. It was huge. It was a fun game. I think I think it was a little bit of both. I think Oklahoma kind of showed up in the second half, and then Texas lost it for themselves. But it was, there was a lot of, there's drama associated with it too, with Rattler getting benched and then Caleb Williams coming in and playing extremely well. Casey Thompson, quarterback for Texas, he looked phenomenal, and Bijan Robinson, of course, he did not disappoint. So it was a great football game. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think, the rivalry is back. I think, we've missed, the excitement of this game for a while. I think a lot of other big rivalries have taken over, the Iron Bowl, the game with Ohio State and Michigan. But this game was always that historic, for me, I think besides maybe just right below the Iron Bowl, that historic game that we always look forward to every year. And with, Oklahoma being a power year in and year out and Texas taking a big decline, this was kind of a reminder of what the rivalry is. And again, I thought Texas had it. Casey Thompson has been playing phenomenal since taking over at Texas. Coach Sark has that offense rolling. Truly, I think Texas is back. I don't think they were going to go from bad to great year one. But, Coach Sark has them in the right direction. And, Bijan Robinson, I prior to this week, I think I had him as the second best running back behind Kenneth Walker from Michigan State. He goes out and, for me, took over the best running back in college football with just one big game. But I think the big story is our boy, Spencer Rattler. He got benched. He finally got benched.
Yeah.
And I think if he doesn't see the field for the rest of the season, bearing a Williams injury, you think he's declaring for the draft, or is he entering the portal?
Man,
be prepared when you answer this, because there's gonna be a follow-up to no matter which answer you give, so be prepared.
Can I give you my answer after we see who starts this weekend?
Fair. But according to an OU reporter, an OU student who hopped over a fence and took a photo, it looks like it's going to be Williams. But as soon as that happened and Lincoln Riley's canceling media availability, I think it says Mr. Spencer will be working with the second team for the rest of the season. But I think he's done, bearing an injury to Williams. and it's going to
Yeah,
result. I think it's going to result in Rattler entering the transfer portal. I really do, and I think he's going to. I'm confused with what kind of school he's going to go to. I could see him going to a smaller Power 5 school, but I could also
sure.
see like a bigger school that is in need of a quarterback that kind of pursues him. Obviously the quick
Mhm.
everyone wants to guess is Alabama. They have a quarterback for the next couple of years. They're out. You
Mhm.
know, it's gonna be interesting where he ends up. I don't think he's going for the draft at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I don't. If he's not starting, there's no way he's going to go to the draft. And if that's the case, he'll transfer. It kind of makes me think about when Jalen Hurts left Alabama and ended up at Oklahoma. But I don't think he'll be that smooth for Spencer Rattler. I don't think he'll be that positive of a
Mhm.
transition. Kind of like what you were saying, maybe going to a smaller school, or maybe going to a school that's not quite as competitive as Big 12, SEC.
Yeah, I still think for Rattler, I think he has the opportunity and the potential to be a good quarterback. He can make good throws. I think the expectation, but he's not an elite quarterback, and he's following the footsteps of Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts, who are all three elite collegiate quarterbacks and are now
Hmm.
three very good NFL quarterbacks. You can never live up to that hype and that level. He was set up from failure from the beginning. Maybe if he goes to a different school and he plays well, maybe he can get that, Heisman Trophy potential back, or, that first overall pick hype that he was meant to be going into the season. But right
Hmm.
now, he doesn't look like he's not a first round pick. First round picks don't get benched mid season. So
Right.
it's gonna be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out. But we'll focus on the whole team as a whole with Oklahoma.
Hmm.
Was this saying they go undefeated for the rest of the year, which I'm trying to think about. I'm not sure anyone else on their schedule that's worth talking about. But is this a big enough statement win? If the season were to end right now, is this a big enough statement win to put the Oklahoma back in the playoffs?
Yeah, because winning a big rivalry game, I don't know how the system works, but you got to imagine that gives a team some extra points in the rankings. And they did move up 2 spots. Granted, Penn State came off of a loss. Well, Alabama had a loss, but they're still ahead. And then they did move above Alabama. Excuse
They
me.
did.
So, they kind of had fortune based on other teams' misfortune as well. It was good timing for them to crack into the top four. Um, it's kind of tough to say. And you mentioned their schedule. I kind of wonder if that Oklahoma State game is going to be interesting or not. I think we'll learn a lot more about Oklahoma State this week when they play against Texas. But
Mhm.
because I look at 4, 5, 6, right? So that's Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State. I don't, and even into 7 at Penn State. I don't confidently feel like Oklahoma could beat Alabama, Ohio State, or Penn State right now. But it's they don't get that type of head-to-head matchup to decide who goes into the playoffs like that.
Right.
So it's tough to say. But I I I don't think they're going to hold that spot. I really don't. Maybe if they win out, I can't imagine they'll lose it, but who knows?
Yeah. Again, I think it's a little still too early for Oklahoma. I think the big thing that we keep forgetting, and I'm not exactly sure when it's coming out, but we don't know when the playoff rankings are going to look like. We're just going
Hmm.
off the AP rankings right now. So, all that
Hmm.
matters is what that committee says and what those 15 people in that room decide, or I guess COVID Zoom
Right.
meeting. Um, but
Right.
it's gonna what depends on them because they could come out and say something crazy. They could put Alabama back at number 2. They could have
Yeah.
Cincinnati at 15. They have so many different things that we don't know can happen. So it's hard to sit here and say this is going to happen for all these teams, but in the end, it's going to come down to those 15 people in the room. But another game you mentioned one of the teams. Penn State fell on the road to Iowa. Iowa had a good comeback in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Big thing I think for Penn State is injuries hurt them. Sean Clifford going out in the second quarter. That offense looked terrible as soon as he went down. They couldn't
Hmm.
move the ball. The defense was able to do as best they can, but they were getting tired because the offense was running on the field and then running right off the field. So I would love to have watched that game, with a full healthy team the whole game, but
Mm-hmm.
it was unfortunate for Penn State. But what were your thoughts on the Penn State Iowa game?
Man, well, because what I mentioned last week was, I mean, this is a very critical game, especially for Iowa. If Iowa wanted to have a shot at the playoffs, they were going to need to win this game,
Mhm.
and they did it. So looking at it, Iowa potentially, if they just win out the rest of the year, they might be able to hold a spot in the playoffs. Um, Penn State, obviously they wanted to win this game, and it would have been great, but they still have the strength of schedule to
Mhm.
creep back in there. If we'll see how they shake off these injuries, if they can or not, but they have the right type of schedule to, I think, even potentially get back into the playoff conversation because they're not that far out of it now.
No.
Um, yeah, they got Ohio State week 9, Michigan who's 8 right now week 11, and Michigan State who's number 10 right now week 13.
I think that
And
also the big thing is
yeah,
a rematch with Iowa in the Big Ten championship game.
and that exactly,
So
and that could be very, very interesting.
absolutely.
Especially if that happened and Penn State ended up beating Iowa, that could be a really very, very controversial situation there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Again, Penn State. I don't think Penn State's out. Like you said, they have
Mhm.
a really good schedule coming up that plays in their favor. If they can go undefeated for the rest of the season, I think that puts them right in playoff potential. Like you look at
Mhm.
their one losses, to a top 3 team. Injuries hurt them. No, if they go
Right.
undefeated plus the Big Ten championship, I mean, it's hard to not put them in the playoffs at that point. But I think again, they
Mhm.
need to get healthy. If they're
Yeah.
off. They have a bye week this week. Sean Clifford needs to get healthy. I forget the name off the top of his head, but the starting defensive tackle, he's out for the season. And I was Penn State after that loss always plays bad. They always play bad. So I think it's good for them that they have a bye, and then their next game's against Illinois. So it's not like they're going from a loss against Iowa, then to playing
Yeah.
Ohio State, Michigan State. They have time to get healthy, and even if Sean Clifford doesn't play against Illinois, whoever, I don't even know the dude's name, but he has an
Mhm.
opportunity to at least get some reps, kind of progress a little bit and try to keep the offense moving a little bit. But
Yep.
if they go undefeated for the rest of the year and it's a rematch of Penn State Iowa and they take down Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, the committee has a lot of thinking to do. I think Penn State would have to have the edge. They'll have the strength of schedule and they'll
Yep.
have the conference championship game.
Right. Yep. And if that scenario plays out, I agree with you. I think I would guess that Penn State would get the nod ahead of Iowa if that scenario played out.
Yeah. Again, there's also another team that I think is still knocking on the door. Ohio State is starting to get start to roll in
Yeah.
a lot more. And
Mhm.
I think C.J. Stroud, he hiccups the first few weeks. It was
Mhm.
just getting adjusted to the game. Ryan Day was struggling to work with a new quarterback and who's young and inexperienced. Obviously, the issues with the defensive coordinator and just being a terrible defensive coordinator for a program like Ohio State.
Yeah.
If they go undefeated for the rest of the year, that means they'll have wins over Penn State, Michigan. Not sure if they
And
have
Michigan.
Michigan. Well, they
They
have Michigan
do.
State.
They have,
So
yeah,
they'll have.
Michigan State, Michigan back to back at the end of the season.
So there's 3 top 10 teams. Then you'll have Iowa in the Big Ten championship game.
Yep.
There you go. I mean, at this point, I think it's fair to say whoever wins the Big Ten is making the playoffs.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Again, there's also, the other teams that we're not even talking about. Michigan can go undefeated for the rest of the year. Michigan State can go undefeated for the rest of the year. This, as much as I
Yep.
want to say, I'm from Pennsylvania. I want to say, go, we are, baby. But this conference, the Big Ten East, I think is the biggest
Mhm.
toss-up of a division I've ever seen in college football. Ever.
Yeah.
How big of a toss-up it is
Yeah.
at this point.
It's crazy how competitive it's going to be the second half of this season, and it's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when those 4 that we've been talking about: Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Michigan, when they start playing each other. Um, it'll be really exciting to see who the last man standing is.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and then we're also keep forgetting we keep like just pushing them off, saying if they beat Iowa, Iowa's easily can go undefeated for the rest of the year.
Man,
Very
yeah,
easily can go undefeated, and they're Big Ten champs.
yep,
So you have the Big Ten East, who has 4 top 10 teams. You're forgetting about the other Big Ten team. Unless they decide to just completely mess it up, are walking to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game at this point.
right. Yeah, it's that that's tough for those other three who don't win their half of the conference, but that's college football, man.
It's gonna be weird that at least one, probably two, are gonna have 2 to 3 losses, and it's like
Mhm.
they're gonna be like a 2 or like a 3 loss team, and they're probably better than most 1 loss teams by far.
Right.
So
Mhm.
it shows you the strength of conference this year for the Big Ten, and kind of little segues into the next conference. The conference that is always dominant and was, I thought, walking to two representatives in the college football playoff, but the SEC.
Mhm.
Georgia did what Georgia had to do, as as normal.
Yep.
But the big one, big bad Bama,
Yeah.
has fallen. A lot
Man.
happened. Their streak of beating unranked opponents was snapped, and the big one, the one I've been waiting for, Nick Saban has finally lost to one of his former assistants.
Isn't that interesting? That's crazy. He what was he like 24-0 against
Yeah.
former assistant coaches or
I mean, you
something?
look at the
That's
whole SEC,
nuts.
everyone's coached under him at some point. Kirby Smart was there. Pretty sure
Yeah.
Dan Mullen has coached with them. The whole Big Ten or SEC is pretty much coached with Saban at some point in their lives. But I also
Yeah.
didn't realize when Jimbo Fisher was there, because I thought he was at Florida State for a majority of it, but it was at LSU. Little fun fact, everybody, it was at LSU. But
Oh, interesting.
yeah,
Gotcha.
that was the fun fact that I learned. It was he was at LSU when he worked under Saban. But man,
Huh.
first of all, all right, first, what are your thoughts on the game? Are you more impressed with Texas A&M, or are you more disappointed with Bama?
I more so disappointment. I mean, Texas A&M, they're not a bad football team. They're not as good as we had thought or as the consensus had hoped at the beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
season, but it mostly a disappointment in Bama. And my biggest takeaway is I think that secondary really got exposed, especially in the second half. It wasn't just mistakes like penalties and whatnot, but also straight up just getting beat. I think Texas A&M had a big gain on a wheel route, I think, and maybe it was a safety that had spun down and collided with a corner and left the guy wide open, and then had that PI going into the end zone right there at the end too. So it was some critical errors, and ironically, that's Nick Saban's position room too. So mostly a disappointment in Alabama. Um, I was I don't know how I feel about how far they dropped in the rankings, if it was not far enough or not, or if it was good,
Mm-hmm.
but they fell to the top four. And then Texas A&M went from unranked to number 21. So exciting game though.
Yeah. I think A&M's a good football team. They had a little bit of a rough patch. I think Arkansas was a better team than A&M. So, unfortunately, Arkansas, pounced on them. And
Yeah.
then you think, just a rough game against Mississippi State after, a devastating loss. I think, just the focus wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Texas A&M is still a good football team. They can move the ball on offense. They are really good on defense. But it's disappointing in Alabama. This is a game they
Yeah.
should not have lost. A lot of missed opportunities, like you kind of said in the secondary. They got exposed a lot, and it's not.
Yep.
They weren't playing Alabama football. Yeah, they put up a gazillion points, but Texas A&M put up a gazillion and 1 points. So
Right.
in the end, that's what happens. But falling out of the playoffs, it really doesn't matter to me where they fall out of the playoffs, because it's shown me now that Georgia is the superior team. And we'll talk about, obviously, Georgia a little bit later when we talk about
Yeah.
their game this week. But Georgia, I think, is
Mm-hmm.
the superior team in the SEC. This week has proved it.
Yeah.
I think all goes well, Georgia's going to win the SEC. That
Yep.
would also put the game above Alabama. And if Alabama loses the SEC championship game, there's no way I think they can make the playoffs. A 2-loss team has never made the playoffs. This
Yeah.
Alabama team is not the team to do it. Just because, like,
No.
if they would have lost just one game and that was to Georgia, I think I'd be fine with it.
Mhm.
If they win the SEC championship game, I think we have a tough decision to make. Do you put them ahead of Georgia? Like, especially if Bama's 6 by the time playoffs come, you can't drop Georgia from 1 to unranked, losing to the 6th team in the country. But can you give Alabama that big of a boost? No. What are your thoughts on a scenario like that?
Gosh, I don't know why I hadn't thought about that yet. I only thought about the Iowa Penn State scenario
Yeah.
because I guess really the only thing I had thought about was, well, Bama's not going to make the playoffs because they're not going to beat Georgia. But if they did win, boy, it I almost feel like they would both make the playoffs if Alabama won the SEC championship game. I think Georgia and Bama would end up in the playoffs because obviously they're still a great football team, but and you can't discredit Georgia from losing a game like that, especially if it's a tight one. And then of course if Georgia's still the number 1 team in the country, that's enough to elevate Alabama back in.
Yeah, this is wild of a playoffs, and I think the big one we're also keep forgetting is Clemson's not even in the conversation anymore, which is still
They're not even in the top
hilarious.
25.
I know it's such a crazy, man, the Eagles suck.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's
Just
crazy. This like the year was like the ACC has completely taken themselves out of relevancy this year. Like the 2 teams that were supposed to be competing are both out. They're not relevant at all. The 2 quarterbacks that were supposed to be the top 5 quarterbacks in college football aren't being talked about anymore.
Yep.
But right now, who are your top 4 teams? If the playoffs are to start today, who we got?
If playoffs started today, man, you would throw this curveball at me.
I'm good at that.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that Georgia and Iowa are solidified. I like where they're at. I think they make the playoffs if they started today. No to Oklahoma right now. I got question marks around Cincinnati. Okay, Georgia. I think Georgia, Iowa, Alabama, Penn State. I think that's my 4. If we started the playoffs tomorrow, those would be my 4.
Yeah, I mean you hit it right out with Georgia and Iowa 1 and 2. I think that's safe to say right now. And I think for 3 for me, I'm gonna stick with Penn State. I know they were ranked 4 and they lost, and that would bump them up. But first of all, injuries hurt them, and look who they lost to. And number 4, I love the G5. Go Bearcats. I'm taking Cincy, man. Like they've done everything that they've had to do. They took down Notre Dame in pretty convincing fashion. They dominated Temple last week, which is never an easy win. And it's like every game's like I think it was the Murray State game that they were tied 7-7 going in the half. Cincinnati comes out in the second half, scores 35 points. The offense is rolling. Desmond Ridder is balling out. Ahmad Gardner, who's not getting enough attention right now on defense, is playing lights out. He's, I think, 6 for 9 passes are 6 for 19 that have gone his way. 2 interceptions. The ball is not being thrown to him that much, and when it is, it's an incomplete pass. He's making a case to be a top tier, cornerback prospect for next April. That team is rolling, and look at the rest of their schedule. They should win out. Their toughest game is going to be SMU, and whoever they play in the conference championship game. But they've done what they've needed to do. Right now, I think they're a top 4 team.
Yeah, and I wanted to put them in my top 4. They're right there. They're 4.5. And I'm really glad they have that SMU game at the end of the year because obviously their strength of schedule dips way down for the majority of the remainder of the season, especially for the next 5-6 weeks. but having that SMU game there, which I mean SMU is just 23 right now, but I think that's really going to play to their advantage when it comes to end of the year rankings, end of the year playoff rankings. I think that's going to be extremely helpful for them.
Yeah, it's there's honestly the top 10. There's not really a team in the top 10 right now that I'm like, yeah, man, they're probably not going to make it. Even Alabama, they control their own destiny. They win out plus the SEC championship game. It's hard to put. Even Georgia, even though they're the best team in college football by far, their road to the playoffs is not easy. They still got to go through Alabama, bearing no crazy stuff happens there. But that game against Florida is not a gimme. Florida's a tough team. They played Alabama really, really well.
Yep.
That game's not going to be easy for Georgia. And it's also the SEC. We see weird games and weird teams like that win all the time.
Yeah, I mean, we just watched an unranked Texas A&M beat Alabama, so I mean, it's not too far out of the question to see number 11 Kentucky or number 20 Florida, who Georgia has this week and the next week back to back. So they're definitely not out of the woods yet. There's a big drop off from there for the rest of the season until the SEC championship game, but they got some tough games these next 2 weeks. Kentucky's been surprising people. They've been doing a lot of great things, and then like you said, Florida's not a bad team. They lost a couple tight ones, but yeah, something crazy could still happen this coming week or the next week.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be a crazy time, and let's get into some game picks. That's always the best thing because we can sit here and talk about the playoffs as much as we want, but how did you not? I hate Jalen Rieger with a passion. Oh, he's hurt. He dropped the ball and he's hurt.
Oh man.
Yeah. Down 28-7. Go Birds. 3 top 10 picks. Kyle Hamilton and Derek Stingley. Here we come, baby. Let's go. But yeah, we can sit here and argue about the playoffs for the next 5 hours, and we still won't get anywhere because we don't know what those 15 people are saying in that little room or little Zoom meeting that they're having. But we can argue about. But touch on it real quick because I love talking about it. Right now, who's your Heisman Trophy winner? Season ended right now. You knew I was going to ask it at some point.
I had a hunch.
You should know this by now.
Actually, I had a hunch about that one. So, I wanted to look up the odds because I want to see how far Rattler fell.
Oh, look it up. I got you.
Excuse me. You're gonna look it up?
Yeah, okay. I got you.
So, because I think he was still top 2 going into last week. Him and who was he up there with? I can't remember. But anyways, my favorite now, and this kind of goes back to our show last week when we had the coaches on here, and I think it was Coach Pape said, maybe just one big moment from Bijan Robinson this week in a big game, and he'll skyrocket. And it kind of happened. We were talking about how stagnant it was, and there wasn't really a true outlier for the Heisman contention at this point in the season. And I think Robinson had a great game. I had his stats here. He had 20 carries for 137 yards, 1 touchdown, and one big run for 50 yards. And in a big game like that against a quality opponent, that's when we start finding our guys that are going to make it and get the final bids for the Heisman. And right now I think he's definitely up there. It's oftentimes it's a quarterback's award, and majority of the quarterbacks I don't think have been deserving of winning that so far this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had back-to-back years where a non-quarterback won it.
So I'm looking at the odds right now. Bryce Young and Matt Corral are top 2, obviously. Pretty decent margin between second and third. CJ Stroud is third. Kenneth Walker is still staying there at number 4, which I'm kind of surprised about. Desmond Ridder is at 5. Bijan Robinson is at 6. Tied for 7th is Sean Clifford, Trayvon Henderson, and Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. So our boy is MIA. because he's
He's
a bum.
gone.
He's booty.
Gone.
And Heisman Trophy winners don't come off the bench midseason
No.
or get put to the
No.
bench midseason. But
Yeah.
you touched on it. There's no clear winner. In all honesty, no. When I think of Heisman Trophy winner, I'm thinking elite player. It's usually a quarterback's award. Elite player, and someone that's having a great season. I don't see that anywhere at all.
Right.
But again, at this point, it has to be Bryce Young. He's had the numbers. He's beaten Matt Corral, whatever you want to pronounce his name. He's won the game, dominated the game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, unless he gets hurt or someone just decides to go off for the second half of the season and just put up video game numbers, I think it's Bryce Young's award to lose at this point.
Yeah, I'd like to know where he stands nationally as far as passing touchdowns, because he's already got 20 on the year, and that's
he was not as high as when I was checking.
Really?
I get bored at work sometimes, and then I just get bored and I just go through ESPN stats because what else is there to do?
Yeah.
So for yards, he's 11th.
Interesting.
He's 11th behind Brendan Armstrong of Virginia. He's 1.
Yeah.
Touchdowns. He is 3.
Gotcha.
Tanner Mordecai from SMU, if I pronounce that name.
Okay.
And Bailey Zape from Marshall's rival, Western Kentucky.
Interesting. Okay.
So he's third. I mean, yeah, great. Go. Yeah, just go Herd. Let's go, Jalen. Good job, Jalen. Look, we're on the board. We cut the deficit in half. Let's go, baby. Only down 14. But yeah, I think it's Bryce Young's award to lose at this point. I mean, he's walking towards it. Unless someone goes off, I think, and he doesn't, it's hard to not give it to him. Again, obviously, if he stays healthy, that's the big one, and I hope for that. But if all goes the way it's normally going, it's going to be his award to win. And Saban finally gets that quarterback Heisman Trophy winner that he's been looking for the last decade. So, go Bama, go big bad Bama. But it sucks that he's not going to make the playoffs. But now let's get into some fun game picks. We just talked about them, but our G5 game of the week: Gus Malzahn and the University of Central Florida Golden Knights take on Luke Fickell, Desmond Ridder, Ahmad Gardner, and the Cincinnati Bearcats. What do you got?
This one was pretty easy for me. Cincinnati at home. They're 21.5-point favorite last time I checked. Central Florida's coming in 3-2. Cincinnati's just got way too much firepower for the Golden Knights to handle. I got Cincinnati winning this one.
Yeah, I think it's just an easy game. Cincinnati's been dominant and on fire all season. They obviously didn't have a huge, margin of victory against Notre Dame, but top 10 win against Notre Dame was a huge win for them, and they kind of struggled a little bit against Indiana, but we're able to pull it out. But every other game has just been dominating on the offensive side, and then their defense has just been lights out. So Cincinnati at home, Central Florida hasn't looked good. I think it's also Gus Malzahn's first year. He's kind of first year jitters, a little bit struggles a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think Central Florida is going to get back to where Central Florida was a couple years ago with him at the helm. But right now, this is Luke Fickell's team. This is Luke Fickell's game. He's gonna have those guys prepared and ready to go for this weekend. So
absolutely.
I hope for a competitive game, but I'm not optimistic in the slightest. But all right, another fun game, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. Oklahoma State Cowboys versus the Texas Longhorns. Who we got?
So I'm really intrigued by this one. This one should be pretty exciting. I don't think we've talked about Oklahoma State yet.
Nope.
Held tonight, but they are 5-0. They're number 12 right now. They did just come off of a bye week, which whatever that may mean to somebody, that could be good or bad.
Mhm.
But they have some pretty nice wins. They beat Baylor, beat Kansas State, which are good, notable wins for them. One piece that I found pretty interesting as far as point totals so far this year, any of the Oklahoma State games, they haven't gone over 51. I think they had two totals at 51, whereas for Texas, their lowest point total has been 56. So obviously some more high flying huck and chuck of football for Texas and a little bit more controlled stuff for Oklahoma State. So it'll be interesting to see how those two worlds collide. Uh, I believe Texas is going to be down Jordan Whittington, their wide receiver too. I know he left the game early. Not sure if he's going to come back or not. But they still have Xavier Worthy, who's phenomenal. Casey Thompson's incredible. Bijan Robinson, we just talked about him potentially winning the Heisman Trophy and how great he was last week. Plus Texas being at home, I got the Longhorns winning this one.
Yeah, I'm going with Texas. No, they obviously struggled. No, okay, I can't even speak. The loss last week stings. You know, they should have closed that game, but Casey Thompson is, I think, on his way to being a top quarterback in college football.
Yep.
And then you add on top of that Bijan Robinson, who has just been electric this year. He's running the ball, with ease. It doesn't even look like anybody's stopping him. So they have a great running back and quarterback duo. Obviously, you mentioned one of the wide receivers isn't going to may or may not be playing this week. So that's going to be tough for Texas, but they've put up so many points consistently that I don't think Oklahoma State is going to be able to handle just the overload of power that Texas is. I know Texas needs to fix a little bit of things on defense, kind of start to, not throw games at the end, that don't collapse mid-game. But I think Texas and just their overall just force and just the power that they play with right now, I'm going to go with Coach Sark, Casey Thompson, and the Longhorns. But, Sam Ehlinger said it a few years ago. I'm going to say now, they're back.
Yeah. Now they're back.
Now they're back. Once Sam Ehlinger and Tom Herman were gone, Texas is back. Says something about both of them. Speaking of one of the teams that I believe Texas lost to this year, I think they did. And also another very overrated quarterback that had high hopes this year, Bo Nix, who I'm not even sure if he has a starting job anymore. The Auburn Tigers take on the Razorbacks, man. Bo Nix is – I think the only reason we're not talking about him is because Spencer Rattler was such a bust this year. But Bo Nix has played just as bad.
Yeah.
He was benched against Georgia State. You were supposed to be the saving grace for Auburn, and you're getting benched against Georgia State. Everyone's thought their offense was the best offense in college football for the first, I think it was 2 weeks, and then week 3 they played Penn State. They didn't play anybody week 1 and 2. They played FCS schools. Good. I'm glad you could put up 60 points in consecutive weeks against FCS and low-end Division I football programs. You're in the SEC.
Right.
You're a top-tier SEC school, and you're a quarterback that's supposed to be the saving grace of this program. I'm glad you were able to do that. But he's not this elite quarterback that we thought he was going to be, and he doesn't look good. And Arkansas, they had the tough game against Georgia. Like, I'm not going to hold that game against them. Like, where they got shut out. They played Georgia, and they met the Georgia defense, and there's a reason Georgia defense is so good. But Arkansas has a lot of athletes. They just seem to be the better athletes on the field. And I think in the end, that's what making them such a good team. Obviously the great recruiting that they're really taking advantage of, the six-year senior thing and the 5th year, all that other stuff in the transfer portal. They built a good team this year, man, and I'm going with the Razorbacks.
Yeah, I like that. So one thing that I noticed, and I'm going to bounce this off you, get your take on it, because obviously Arkansas is number 17 right now, and Auburn isn't ranked. Auburn just had a tough loss to number 1 Georgia this last week, and their only other loss has been to Penn State. Arkansas had a 52-51 loss to Ole Miss. That was an exciting game. And then their only other loss has been to number 1 Georgia. So, is it is it questioning? Is it interesting that Auburn isn't ranked, where they've had losses to higher quality opponents than Arkansas has, or is that just a statement from the AP saying Arkansas is that much better of a team? Don't look too deeply into that strength of schedule.
I generally think Arkansas is the better team. I really am. I think we have the top two teams in the SEC. I still think it's Alabama and Georgia, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we have a little bit of a break, and then you have this group of teams: Arkansas, Kentucky, Ole Miss, A&M. I'm still throwing in that group right now. That it's like they're all so equally matched, and because they already get 2 automatic losses from the top 2 teams, and then they beat up on each other down here, that their losses in the AP people, whoever actually votes, whoever gets that honor, they see 3 losses bump you down, but you got to realize like they're evenly matched teams. They're good teams. But someone has to win. Someone has to lose. It's not the NFL where someone ties the game. Someone's going to win the game. Someone's going to lose the game. You're going to get at least 1, maybe 2 losses from Alabama or Georgia if you are lucky or not lucky to play them. But then you go like, Ole Miss. If between Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Arkansas, say all 4 of them have to play each other, and they all go 2-2 or 2-1 or 1-2, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Are they really that bad of a team, or is it like this group of teams is really good? It's kind of like the Big Ten. When Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan State all have to play each other, and say one of them goes 0-3, are you like, oh, Michigan State sucks? No, you're gonna be like, oh, okay, well they lost to 3 top 5 teams. Don't think they're that bad of a program.
Right. Yep. I'm with you. And that's why this one I put a little side note in my notes here. I said this is my coin flip game of the week, where I'm just, man, it could go either way. But a fun note here. Last week, KJ Jefferson, quarterback for the Razorbacks. Do you know how many touchdowns he scored last week? Air and ground combined.
Ooh.
He had
6. Can I count up 6? I was going to say, can I count on one hand, or do I need 2? Damn.
You need 2.
Video game numbers right there.
Yeah, no kidding. He was 25 for 35 for 326 yards and 3 tutties. He did throw 1 pick. And then he had 20 carries.
1 pick, bench him. Not playing up to the standards.
Yeah. And then he ran the ball 20 times for 85 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's insane.
It must be cool to be like really good at football. I wouldn't know.
I tried.
I'm barely 5 foot. I'm barely 150, so I don't think I'd pan out real well if I tried. But
yeah.
Watching these guys is fun though. But 6 touchdowns, it's remarkable. Those are video game numbers. I don't even think I could do that in video games. I think I tried one time and I just failed. I think I got to 4.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, another fun game. It was kind of added to our list a little bit last minute since you texted me this morning or last night. Don't really remember. Arizona State, number 18, Arizona State. Herm Edwards traveling to Utah to take on the Utes. I also did more research. Utah is favored in this game.
Are they now? Okay, when I saw it was a pick line. It was they didn't have a spread on it. So
Utah's it's not a big margin, but Utah is the favorites. Okay. So before I saw that, I was like, I'm like, if I'm a betting man, which I am, I'm going to probably take Utah in this game to depending on what the line is.
Yeah.
I think Arizona State, though, is going to win out. Jaden Daniels is, one of those guys who's making a statement for the Heisman. He has a tall hill to climb, but, he's a great quarterback, and they're underdogs now, so I'm gonna go with the Sun Devils.
Gotcha. Nice. It's kind of interesting to think, but Arizona State and Utah are the only 2 remaining teams in the Pac-12 that do not have a conference loss. Utah beat USC last week, which
fight on.
That should be a big deal. Should be a big deal, but unfortunately, it's not. Cameron Rising, he did good. He 22 for 28 for 306 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. had a little success running the ball too, 27 yards and a touchdown. Arizona State beat Stanford, which Stanford beat Oregon, but still doesn't mean a whole lot here.
Yeah.
And Arizona State's only loss has been to BYU, which BYU has been pretty tough.
BYU's they've beaten both Utah and Arizona State, so
exactly. Yep.
So it shows you the kind of caliber of team at BYU is. But
yep,
I might stay up for this game. I might actually stay up for this game. Probably not.
I think I'm gonna. I think I'm gonna. But my final point being in the two games that Utah has lost this year, one being BYU, and then they also lost to San Diego State. In both those games, BYU and San Diego State, they were able to control the running game, and that was pretty hurtful for Utah. And I think between Rashad White, running back for the Sun Devils, and then, of course, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback we've already talked about, I think the Sun Devils are going to win the road game here.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun game, I think. I mean, I always hate the Pac-12 games sometimes because they can be exciting games, but they're on too late, and I'm usually drunk or high by the time the game starts. So
you're Mountain Time now, man.
I know. But I'm in Colorado, man. I got to have that Colorado medicine get me through the night. So
yeah, there you go.
But I think it's gonna be a fun game. Unfortunately, I don't think Oregon has what it takes, and I don't think the Pac-12 will be represented in this year's playoffs. But next year, USC might be back, depending on who they hire, which probably not. But I think that's all. Yeah. We have one more game, I think. That's all the banners I got. One more game, our game of the week, college game day game of the week. This is not. Did not have this game circled on my calendar to start the year. But John Calipari and those Kentucky Wildcats. Yes, I know he's a basketball coach, but gotta give him credit. Kentucky Wildcats will travel into Athens, take on the number one. I should get rid of this other banner. Yeah, number one Georgia. Who do we got in this one?
Man, so it's crazy. Kentucky keeps winning. They're 6-0, number 11 now. They had a really nice win against LSU last week, 42-21. So I think that's their third conference opponent that they've beat now, which sometimes says a lot for being in the SEC. They got a really nice trio. They're not super outstanding, but a nice trio at quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Will Levis, Chris Rodriguez, and then Wandale Robinson. They've both been putting up good but not insane numbers this year. Even with that being the case, with them being 6-0 and getting a few games in the conference, they still haven't seen a team that has a defense quite like Georgia, which, I mean, unless you've played Georgia, you haven't seen a defense like Georgia's. So
the 6 teams that Georgia has played have seen a defense like Georgia's. I can guarantee
they're
that
the only ones. Yeah, because I think they still have only allowed 5.6 points per game this year, which is
outrageous,
remarkable. It's insane. But it was fun diving into this one and kind of dissecting Kentucky a little bit more, because I know we looked at them last week, but it's still a pretty easy choice to go with Georgia.
Yeah, we talk about how the Georgia defense is the Georgia defense, and I'll get into the Georgia defense, but the only reason Kentucky is 6-0 is because of the Kentucky defense. The Kentucky defense is very, very good this year. They're again holding opponents to minimal numbers, but they the Kentucky offense has not seen a defense like Georgia, and this Georgia defense is good. They're an NFL defense. I was dissecting the Georgia defense today. I was really bored at work, so I was going deep into that Georgia defense. They're in the conversation now with the 2011 Alabama defense for the best defense of all time. Alabama had 14 guys from that offense, 14 guys from that defense go to the NFL. I don't see a reason why Georgia can't do that. Second thing is, Bama, that 2011 team, held teams to 8.4, 8.2, 8 point something points per game. Wow. Georgia has a pretty decent margin on them on that.
Yeah.
So if they continue, they've only given up, I think, one or two offensive touchdowns all year. I don't think Kentucky has the offense to barrel through them. Again, this Georgia defense, it's elite. I don't even say it's elite. It's amazing how good this defense is. Again, if you want to see what an NFL defense looks like, tune into when's the game? Christian didn't write it, but whenever the game is, I think it's the 3:30 game on CBS this weekend.
1:30 our time. Yeah, I got it right here. Yep.
But the defense is legit. Stetson Bennett. And then we talk about the offense. I say it every week. I was big on JT Daniels going into the season. I'm not even sure who's starting this week. I don't think it's going to really matter for Kentucky, but I think Georgia's better off with Stetson Bennett at the quarterback. I think he makes the better throws. He's making the plays a lot more, and especially with the uncertainty of JT Daniels' health, I like Bennett more, and he's not getting enough attention this year. And I think if he would have started all year, he would be up there with Bryce Young and Matt Corral for the Heisman conversation, just because of how good he's playing. Him and Casey Thompson, all both of those guys, if they played all year and kept playing at the level that they are, I'd put them above those two, honestly, at this point for the Heisman, just because of how great their years are. But because they didn't start the first 2 to 3 weeks, they're not going to get any attention. But we're all talking about this Bulldogs defense and how great it is. Don't forget, the offense still needs to put points on, and they're putting points and more points, and then another 20 points after that.
Yep. It's crazy to think, because a couple weeks ago when they played Arkansas, Arkansas last week, they just scored 51 points against the number 13 team in the country, and Georgia shut them out. And I can't remember how many points Arkansas scored against Texas, but they scored a bunch against Texas too. So it's, if you just look at those comparisons alone, I think that speaks volumes for that Georgia defense, and that doesn't even begin to scratch the surface on how awesome they are.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of Kentucky this year. I think they're not getting the attention that they deserve. Like I said, their defense is also very, very good, but who they get to be compared to, there's no comparison. But Kentucky's a very, very good team. They had the big win against Florida. Again, they're another team that can control their own destiny from here on out and can be playing in a New Year's Six Bowl, on January 1. So, they're a very, very good football team, but I think kind of same thing I said about Arkansas. They're going to run into Georgia and just get demolished. And then we're going to forget about them, or they're going to drop a decent amount in the rankings. But it's like, look who you're getting demolished by. Like, honestly, you should probably move up in the rankings.
Yeah. If they cover the spread, they could probably get a bump up.
What is he? I think I saw the spread 21 points. I kind of looked at that. I'm like, do I go for that? Because that's a pretty decent sized spread for a better. But then I looked at all of Georgia's games, and they're undefeated against the spread this year, obviously. And I think they doubled the spread each time. I think Arkansas was the only time they didn't. But
right. But yeah, Kentucky's good. If they lose this week, I'm still saying if, because who knows what's going to happen. But if they lose this week, there's a good shot that they end the season with only one loss. Looking at the rest of their schedule with Mississippi State, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, New Mexico State, and then Louisville.
They literally play the bottom. They are pits of the SEC from here on out.
Yeah,
and New Mexico State and Louisville.
Yeah,
it was not good.
I know. And going off of what I said earlier, they are 4-0 in the SEC. Kentucky is. They've beaten Mizzou, South Carolina, Florida, and LSU.
Yeah. So granted, they haven't played the top tier teams in the SEC, minus obviously the Florida game. That was a huge game. My one of my friends was arguing that Florida was a top 3 team that week. That was a fun one during our group chat that week. But again, Florida's still a very good team. The SEC, it seems like it's the SEC versus the Big Ten this year. And I'll honestly, I'm not sure about you. I wouldn't be mad at this if there's 2 SEC teams and 2 Big Ten teams.
I'm all right with that.
The only reason I'd be mad is because that meant Cincinnati's not in.
Right. Yeah. That'd be the only bummer. This
But
is the year.
I mean, listen, it is. If not, Luke Fickle's gone.
Shoot. I don't know, man. I don't think he's gonna leave.
I, as a college football fan, I hope he stays. I hope he continues to build, especially with them moving to the Big 12 in the next, I think it's 4 years, 3 to 4 years, 2024 or 2025, one of the two. I don't think there's a snowball's chance he's there by the time they hit the Big 12, just because of how long that actually is. If it was next year, I think maybe. But in all honesty, you're gonna think I'm crazy, but that guy down in Alabama is getting really old. He could be calling it a quit soon. He's a guy that I think Bama will pick up the phone and call, and I think that's the premier job in college football. You know, we always talk about all these top tier top jobs. That is the job in college football.
That would. I hope that happens just because it'd be so crazy. Because that would be insane.
I always wondered, I'm like, who's gonna take that job from Saban? Now, I think there's two scenarios. They go former assistant, or they promote within. So if he leaves this year, which again I don't think he's gonna happen. So don't. I know there's someone probably watching who just recorded me saying that, but like a former assistant, I think could take the job. Maybe a guy in South Carolina that wears orange that's having a really disappointing year and has beaten him in 2 national championship games. He's a possibility. You know, alma mater. It's hard to pass up a chance to go work at the school that you graduated from.
Yeah.
Or they're gonna do what North Carolina basketball or Duke basketball does and promote within. And there's a former Division I and NFL coach on that roster, and Bill O'Brien, man. So part of me wants him to retire just for this excitement to happen, just to see what they're gonna do.
Do you want him to retire? Or do you want him to go coach a different team?
Go coach a different team. Now, when the Jacksonville Jaguars job opens up in a few months, he can go take that job.
Yeah. Oh man. Gosh. Maybe he'll go to the Raiders.
He has 8 years left on Gruden's contract. They can pay off somehow. So, they have the money, so they might as well. And now they aren't locked into Gruden for the next 8 years of their lives. So, I'm excited. I think is there again another topic. We don't have much time left, but I'll just throw this fun little question out for you. Yeah. Every year, there's always a college coach or two. Not Lincoln Riley, because I know that's everyone's go-to. Is there a college coach right now that you think is truly good enough to make that jump into the NFL?
Well, Saban already coached in the NFL, right? He was with the Dolphins a little bit.
For a year and a half. Great experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so who are the few that it's actually worked out for? I know Pete Carroll's one.
Pete Carroll, Matt Rule right now. I mean, it's a little too early to tell with him. Kingsbury right now. I mean, we all know how Chip Kelly panned out. It was great for a year. I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm missing somebody that it worked out for. But honestly,
Pete Carroll, in my opinion,
Carroll's the
most
big
notable. Most notable. Yeah.
He's the most recent. He's definitely the most notable one. Bill, I mean, honestly, I'm still giving it to him. Bill O'Brien wasn't bad. He really wasn't. GM Bill O'Brien
the
sucked.
Coach, yeah.
4 division titles in 6 years. I'm sorry, that's really good. But when you trade away your best talent, I mean, what do you expect to happen and get nothing in return? Yeah. We get David Johnson. So, I mean, Bill O'Brien, the coach, wasn't bad. I still think he's more of an NFL coach because he came from New England when he took the Penn State job, and he wasn't meant to be at Penn State for more than what he was actually at. But one name that I think is actually would be a good NFL coach, Pat Fitzgerald for Northwestern.
Really?
He's been there for, I want to say, the last 15 years. He's still young, still late or mid to early 40s. and he consistently has been built the program up into a really good Big Ten program. And the players listen to him. He can develop the talent really, really well. He doesn't necessarily have big recruiting classes, but he then takes that talent and has been able to transform it into some really good talent, on the field. He's young enough, so it's not like you're getting a very old coach and, like Saban or Urban Meyer right now.
Sure.
I think it's a risk, and I think it may or may not pay off. But if anybody, he's gonna be my pick for. If I got to pick one coach, he's my one coach. Obviously Lincoln Riley, but Lincoln Riley would never make the move.
Yeah, I don't think he would either. That's interesting though. I wouldn't have considered him, but
you also got to realize the coaches that have been in the conversation or have made the jump, they're never the big time coaches. You never hear of Dabo making the move. You never hear of Saban once again. You didn't hear of Urban Meyer doing it until he left Ohio State. Who else am I missing? Lincoln Riley's in the conversation every year. You never heard of James Franklin. You never heard of any of these guys. It's look at the coaches. Kingsbury came from Tech. Matt Rule came from Baylor. Granted, Pete Carroll came from USC. That's probably the one outlier in the equation. But I don't think anybody else in the last few years have come. I mean, Bill O'Brien even came from Penn State, which at the time wasn't a top program that it is now. So,
right.
I mean, you got to look at some of these other coaches that are really good coaches, but just not at the bigger schools.
Sure. Man.
See, I always got to end the shows with a little bit of fun and a little something that you don't expect. Creates a little some fun stuff at the end of the show, and it helps me not pay attention to the Eagles game. But
so because you started mentioning a smaller school, a coach from a smaller school going, but just talking about what Iowa has been doing, and their coach Kirk Ferentz. He's already been a coach in the NFL. I'm sorry, I was actually just checking him out.
It's Matt Campbell that's getting a lot of attention at Iowa State.
Interesting.
He's been. I think it was last year. A lot of teams were interviewing him, but I think he's still a couple years away from building the Iowa State team program up. I think until they win the Big 12. But I think I just thought of this. He has NFL experience as an offensive coordinator. If he can build Texas back up, and again, he's young enough. What about Coach Sark?
Man. I think with what we're seeing out of Casey Thompson now, with that style of play, I think that's kind of what the NFL is going towards. So I think if he had the right quarterback, sure. If he could just get drafted with Casey Thompson into the NFL and then coach that team.
Sure. There you go. Yeah, I'm excited. I always get excited around the coaching carousel just because it's always exciting to see who goes where. It's ooh. We sat and argued about USC job for 15 minutes. I think our first show. So it's crazy all the options that these teams and schools have, and just the good pool of talent that they have. Come on, sorry, Eagles are starting to play football again. They only wait till the 8 minutes left in the game, but we're playing football. Nick Sirianni's finally using our running back. So hopefully we keep going on this. But this was another fun episode. As always, you have any final closing statements before we wrap up the night?
As always, I'm excited for this next week. Game we talked about. That's probably some more of the really exciting ones. I'm really looking forward to the Oklahoma State, Texas, and Auburn, Arkansas. That one should be very competitive. And then the late night game, Arizona State, Utah. That should be a good one to stay up for. My brothers are going to be in Laramie at the Wyoming Fresno State game this week. So tough one for the Cowboys, but should be a good one for them to watch. So really excited for them. But yeah, should be a good show. Should be a good week of football, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Absolutely, I know. I also realize it's an hour and 5 minutes. I've yet to mention them. Marshall, they finally won a game. They broke that 3-game skid. They barely beat Old Dominion, which, man, that was hard to watch. Grant Wells throwing a 50-yard touchdown with 30 seconds left. And I'm like, oh, great. That's plenty of time for Old Dominion to walk down the field, get in field goal range, kick a field goal. I'm crying because we just lost to Old Dominion. But, Old Dominion has to go for a 58-yard field goal. And fortunately, if it was from 55, he would have made it. But fortunately, those 3 yards helped us. But we were able to walk in, overtime and help win the game. But, man, that was brutal and that was hard to watch. And then Maryland, I had high hopes for them. And then they just shit the bed the last couple weeks. So I'm done with the Maryland bandwagon right now. I'll stick to the herd and go with them. But this is another great episode, another lot of great discussion. Big week of college football, as always. It's going to be hard for it to match up to last week's fun and excitement, but we'll see what happens. We'll see. But I'm excited. Playoffs are, they're on the horizon. The Heisman's on the horizon. The coaching carousel's on the horizon. So I'm excited. But thank you guys for all tuning in today. This is another great episode. Please tune in to all the great shows at the Cut FFB. They have the Cut Fantasy Show with Christian and Randy whenever they do that. Sorry, Christian and Randy, I don't remember what the show is, but love you guys. Coach Approach on Wednesdays. The DFS Dive, which I'm pretty sure they did today, but it's usually on Fridays. But check them out. And obviously, check us here at the Cut, College Football Cut. For Jerred, I'm your host, Adam. This is a great show, great night. We will catch you all next Thursday night. Later.